The colony of Crelly 7 existed on the edge of everything that mattered. Mining world rich in rare minerals, home to 42,000 Vorkath citizens who had traded the comfort of the core systems for the promise of wealth. They were hard people, practical people, the kind who knew the dangers of the frontier and accepted them without complaint. Commander Ethrax had visited Crelly 7 once 30 cycles ago. He remembered the dust that got into everything, the constant whine of the atmospheric processors, the way the twin gravity wells of the system's gas giants made navigation a constant calculation. He remembered the children playing in the hydroponic domes, their scaled faces split by wide grins as they chased each other through the artificial greenery. He remembered thinking that this was what the Dominion was built to protect. Now he watched the emergency transmission for the dozenth time, his mandibles pressed flat against his carapace in a gesture of distress he could not suppress. The image was fractured, corrupted by interference. The officer on screen, Subcommander Vex, a capable young officer Ethrax had recommended for this posting personally, looked like he had not slept in days. His eyes were wide, his voice a strained whisper that barely cut through the static. They came from nowhere, no signatures, no warp trails, they were just there. Ships we've never seen, technology we don't understand. They didn't respond to hails, didn't broadcast demands, they just started. The transmission cut to static. When it returned, Vex was staring at something off camera, his face contorted with terror. Commander, I don't think they're going to leave survivors. I don't think they want prisoners, whatever they are. They're not here to negotiate. They're here to. The signal died. Ithrax had dispatched a relief fleet. Within the hour, 3 cruisers, 5 frigates, a carrier with full complement of fighters, standard response, more than standard actually, something about the transmission had unsettled him. Ways he couldn't articulate. 22 hours later, the relief fleet vanished from all tracking systems. No distress calls, no debris fields, nothing to indicate they had ever existed. The Dominion had controlled space in this sector for 800 cycles. They had faced rebellions, rival empires, anomalies that defied physics. They had never, not once, lost 2 fleets in less than a standard day to an unknown enemy. Ithrax stared at the tactical display in his private quarters, the holographic map of the sector rotating slowly. The frontier colonies were marked in pale blue. Crelly 7 was a blinking red dot at the edge of the map. The relief fleet's last known position was marked in amber. Everything else was darkness. His aide, a young communication specialist named Veth, entered without announcing herself. Her posture told him everything he needed to know. More reports, she said, her voice carefully neutral. 3 more colonies have gone dark. The communications buoys are still transmitting, but there's no response from any surface installations. Automated systems report atmospheric breach on all 3 worlds. Ithrax closed his eyes. 3,000 years. 3,000 years since they had made their choice, since they had decided that the strange, aggressive little species from the 3rd planet of the Sol system was too dangerous to leave alive. They had been primitive then, bickering among themselves, barely capable of leaving their own atmosphere, but they had potential, and potential the Dominion Council had decided was a Threat that needed to be eliminated. The extermination had been thorough. Ships bombarded from orbit surface. Installations destroyed, all records of human existence wiped from Dominion. Databases a footnote in history. Minor species that had been deemed incompatible with Dominion values. Ithrax had been young when it happened. He had served on one of the bombardment ships. He remembered watching the blue-green world turn gray, watching the fire spread across continents, watching the atmosphere begin to thin. He had told himself it was necessary. The humans were violent. They would have done the same to the Dominion if they had the chance. He had told himself that for 3,000 cycles. Now he looked at the tactical display and wondered if he had been wrong. The attacks, he said slowly, are they following any pattern? Veth blinked, caught off guard by the question. She brought up a secondary display overlaying the attack locations against sector maps. They're hitting the oldest colonies first, she said after a moment. Ones that were established during the first wave of expansion, the ones that have been part of the Dominion the longest. Ithrax felt something cold settle in his chest. Not random attacks then. Targeted, deliberate. The enemy wasn't just killing Dominion citizens. They were killing Dominion history. Why those worlds? Veth asked, not really expecting an answer. Ithrax thought about the crew of the bombardment ship, the way they had celebrated after the first volley, the way they had toasted to the end of humanity. Because they're the worlds that were founded first, he said quietly. Because they're the worlds that have been occupied the longest, because they're the worlds that he stopped. A terrible understanding dawning. He pulled up the historical records, the founding dates of every colony that had gone dark. Then with a trembling hand, he pulled up the classified records, the ones that detailed the human extermination. The dates matched. Every world they've hit, Ithrax whispered, was founded during the first 100 years after Earth was destroyed. They're not just attacking random targets, they're attacking the worlds that were built on the ashes of humanity. Veth stared at him, her young face pale beneath her scales. Commander, you can't be suggesting the humans, Ithrax said, and the words tasted like ash. The humans survived. Captain Myra Voss stood at the observation window of the shattered Promise, watching the fires consume Vex's colony from orbit. 3,000 years of preparation, 3,000 years of waiting, 3,000 years of building, learning, breeding, training, 3,000 years of carrying the weight of a murdered world. And now, finally, they had begun. The colony below had been a fortress. Orbital defenses that would have stopped any conventional fleet, ground to space. Batteries that could punch holes in dreadnoughts, a garrison of 50,000. Dominion soldiers, all trained to the highest standards of their species. It had taken Voss, crew 4 hours to dismantle every defense, kill every soldier, and render the colony silent. She did not feel satisfaction. She did not feel triumph. She felt nothing but the familiar ache of grief, the constant companion of every human who had been alive when Earth died. That day had seared itself into her memory with a clarity that never faded. She had been 6 years old. Her mother had taken her to park near their home. She remembered the grass beneath her feet, the smell of something cooking from a vendor's cart, the sound of other children laughing. She remembered looking up at the sky and seeing the Ships. She remembered the way her mother's face had changed, the way her hand had tightened around Voss's, the way she had whispered, "Don't look, sweetheart. Don't look." The fire had come from above, not fire. Really something worse, energy that turned everything it touched to ash. She had seen the trees in the park evaporate. She had seen the vendors cart disappear. She had seen her mother's face dissolve into light. And then nothing. When she had emerged from the shelter, one of the few that had survived, she had found a world turned to glass. Cities were craters, the oceans were steam, the sky was a thick blanket of ash that blotted out the sun. She had been one of the lucky ones. Her underground shelter had been built to withstand orbital bombardment. 3 years of supplies. She had shared it with 100 other survivors. They had waited. No help came. The forecast had been thorough. The survivors had emerged to find a planet that was dead. Nothing grew. Nothing moved. They had salvaged what they could from the wreckage, buried their dead, and started the long, impossible work of rebuilding. 3,000 years later, here they were. Voss turned away from the window. Glow of the burning colony reflected in her eyes, but she felt nothing. She had spent too many years feeling too much. Now there was only the mission. "Captain," her first officer said from the door. The woman's name was Adebyo, and she had been with Voss for 40 years. She had the same haunted look that all of them carried. "The crew is assembled. They're waiting for your address." Voss nodded. She had known this moment would come. The first strike had been purely military, a test of their capabilities, a statement of their existence. The next phase would be different. The next phase would require them to become something more than soldiers. She walked to the main briefing room, her footsteps echoing in the silent corridors. The shattered promise was a dreadnought, in the old style, built not for speed, but for endurance. It carried a crew of 3,000, all of them human, all of them survivors or descendants of survivors. Every one of them had lost someone. The briefing room was full. 3,000 faces, old and young, turned toward her as she entered. They were a strange mix of human traits, dark skin and light, tall and short, scarred and smooth, but they all had the same eyes, the same hard, knowing eyes that had seen too much. Voss stood on the podium and looked out at her crew. She had served with some of them for her entire adult life. Others had been born on this ship, had never known any world but the cold steel corridors of humanity's fleet, but they all understood what they were fighting for. "You know what we've done," she said, her voice carrying through the silent room. "We've hit them, we've made them bleed, and they don't know we're coming." A murmur of assent rippled through the crew. "But this is not about revenge," Voss continued. "Revenge is a fire that burns hot and dies. What we carry is deeper than that. We carry the memory of Earth, not as a symbol, not as a story, as a place that was real, a place we walked, a place we loved." She paused, looking at the faces before. "Sorry. I remember the rain," she said, "the way it smelled on concrete, the way it felt on my face. I remember my mother's hand in mine. I remember the taste of real food cooked over fire. I remember a world that was alive." She heard a soft sob from somewhere in the back of the room. "They took that from us," she said. "They took everything, not because we threatened them, not because we were dangerous. They took it because they could, because they believed they had The right. Her voice hardened. 3,000 years, they thought we were. Extinct, they thought they had erased us, but we endured, we learned, we grew. And now we have come home. She pressed a button on the podium. Holographic display behind her showed the map of Dominion space, 1,000. Worlds spread across 1,000 systems. Each one was marked with a date. The oldest colonies, Voss said. The ones they built on the graves of our ancestors, those are our targets. We will burn them one by one, not because we want their worlds, not because we want their resources. We will burn them because they were built on stolen ground. She looked out at her crew again. Some of you were born to this mission. Some of you have lived your entire lives waiting for this moment. I won't tell you that it will be easy. I won't tell you that we will all survive, but I will tell you this: every world we destroy is a world that was built on the bodies of our people. Every Vorkoth we kill is a killer who participated in genocide. This is not war, this is justice. She let the words hang in the air. 3,000 years, she said. They thought we were gone, they were wrong. We are the children of Earth. We are the survivors of extinction, and we will not stop until every Vorkoth in the galaxy knows the name of the world they destroyed. The room erupted into applause, not the polite applause of ceremony, but something primal, something ancient, the applause of a people who had been given permission to grieve. Voss stepped down from the podium and walked back to her quarters. Adebio followed. Captain, she said, you know they're going to mobilize their entire fleet. They're going to come for us. Voss nodded. I know, and we're going to be waiting. Ithrax walked the corridors of the Dominion Council building with a heavy tread. The structure was ancient, built during the first expansion cycle, when the Vorkoth had believed that nothing in the galaxy could challenge their supremacy. The walls were carved with reliefs of their conquests, their victories, their monuments to themselves. He had always found the building impressive. Now it seemed hollow, a testament to a species that had grown complacent in its power. The council chamber was packed. Representatives from every major house, every major fleet, every major industrial concern. They were arguing amongst themselves, their voices rising and falling in a chaotic symphony of accusation and denial. This is ridiculous, one of the counselors was saying. There's no evidence that these attacks are connected. It could be any number of the evidence, Ithrax interrupted, stepping into the center of the chamber, is that we have lost 12 colonies in 12 standard days. We have lost 2 fleets without a single survivor, and we have no idea what we're facing. The counselor fell silent. Ithrax was not the highest-ranking officer in the Dominion, but he had a reputation. He had fought in 3 major campaigns. He had never spoken without cause. What do you propose, Commander? The Supreme Counselor asked. The old Vorkath was seated at the head of the chamber, his scales mottled with age, his eyes sharp despite his years. Do you have a theory? Ithrax hesitated. He had spent the last 3 days in the archives, digging through records that had been sealed for centuries. He had found what he was looking for, but he had also found something else, something that had chilled him to his core. I have more than a theory, he said. I have an identification. He activated the chamber's holographic display. An image appeared, an old image. taken from Dominion surveillance. Archives a bipedal creature, roughly 2 m tall with soft flesh and no carapace. It was wearing a simple coverall and looking up at the sky. The humans, Ithrak said. The chamber erupted, counselors shouted. Over each other, accusations flew. The Supreme Counselor slammed a clawed hand against the arm of his seat, demanding silence. Impossible, one of the counselors said. When the noise had died down, humans were exterminated, we saw their world burn, we made certain there were no survivors. We made certain there were no survivors. On Earth, Ithrak said, that doesn't mean there were no survivors elsewhere. They had colonies, they had ships, some of them could have escaped, and then he paused, they could have hidden. Waited. The chamber fell into a cold silence. 3,000 years, the Supreme Counselor said, you're suggesting that a species we believe to be extinct has been rebuilding, has been preparing, and now they've come back to take their revenge, Ithrax finished. Yes. This is speculation, another counselor said. We have no proof. The attacks could be anything, a new species we haven't encountered, a rogue faction of our own people, anything. Ithrax called up another image. This one was from the wreckage of the relief fleet. He had had to work through the debris for hours, scanning each piece for any remnant of data. Finally he had found it, a recording from the ship's main computer. It was damaged, fragmented, but it contained something important. Listen, he said. The recording played, static, a voice, calm, controlled, and utterly alien, speaking in a language that had not been heard in Dominion space for 3,000 years. To anyone who is listening, we are the survivors of Earth. We are the children of the genocide you thought you had destroyed us. You were wrong. We are coming. We are not coming to fight. We are not coming to conquer. We are coming to take back what was stolen, and we will not stop until every one of you understands what you took from us. The voice stopped. The static returned. Ithrax looked at the council. They have been patient, he said, more patient than any species I have ever encountered. They have waited 3,000 years to strike, not because they were weak, because they were preparing. They have built something that we cannot understand. They have turned their grief into a weapon. What do you want us to do? The Supreme Counselor asked. I want us to mobilize everything. Ithrak said, every ship, every soldier, every weapon. And GT snorts. And GT, they are going to hit our oldest worlds first, and they are not going to stop. This is not a war of conquest. This is a war of annihilation. They don't want our worlds, they want us dead. The council began to argue again. Ithrak, let them. He stood in the center of the room, watching them debate, watching them deny what they had done. He thought about the recording of the human voice, the calmness in it, the certainty. He had heard that tone before in the voices of religious fanatics, in the voices of revolutionary leaders, in the voices of people who believed they had nothing left to lose. The humans had already lost everything. They had lost their world, their culture, their future. They had nothing left to fight for except vengeance. And vengeance, Ithrak knew, was the most dangerous motivator in the galaxy. Voss had never wanted to be a leader. She had wanted to be a farmer like her mother. She had wanted to grow things, to watch them flourish, to feed her people, but Earth had died, and farming had died with it. Now she stood at the control center of the shattered promise, watching as her technicians prepared the weapon they had been building for centuries. They called it the Grief Engine. It was a fitting name. The device was enormous, a sphere of impossibly advanced technology that filled the core of the ship. It worked by exploiting a principle that human scientists had discovered only after the destruction of their world. The universe they had found was not empty. It was filled with energy, the remnants of everything that had ever existed, imprinted on the fabric of reality itself, memories woven into the fabric of existence. The Grief Engine could access that energy. It could find the memories of a world, the echoes of the lives that had been lived there, and then it could make those memories real again. The device was originally designed for a different purpose. The first human scientists had dreamed of reconstructing Earth, of bringing it back from the ashes. They had failed. The dead could not be restored, but the energy remained, and energy could be weaponized. Voss watched as the holographic display showed the next target, a world called Thraxon 4. It was one of the oldest Vorkath colonies, founded just 50 years after Earth's destruction. 50 years. The Vorkath had barely waited for the ashes to cool before they started building. "I want a full burn," Voss said. "No half measures. I want that world to cease to exist." Her tactical officer, a young woman named Park, nodded, powering up the Grief Engine. "Now, Captain." Voss watched the hologram as the technicians worked. The process was delicate. If the energy release was too strong, it would destroy the ship. If it was too weak, it would be ineffective. They had spent centuries calibrating the balance. "Ready," Park said. "Proceed," Voss said. The Grief Engine activated. Voss felt it, more than saw it, a low hum that vibrated through the deck plates, a warmth that spread through the air. The holographic display showed the energy beam lancing out from the ship, cutting across the vast emptiness of space toward Thraxon 4. On the surface of the world, the Vorkath citizens were going about their lives. They were working, laughing, loving. They were building their children's futures. They were living. And then they were gone. The Grief Engine didn't destroy Thraxon for the way conventional weapons would. It didn't scorch the surface or shatter the atmosphere. It simply erased the world, every building, every structure, every living thing. The energy was precise, surgical. It found the memory of the world and deleted it. Voss felt the vibration in her chest. She knew what she was doing. She knew that she was killing millions of Vorkath citizens. Some of them were innocent. Some of them were children. Some of them had probably never even heard of Earth. She didn't care. The Vorkath had killed billions of humans. They had killed her mother. They had killed her home. They had killed everything she had ever loved. If she had to kill every Vorkath in the galaxy to make them understand the weight of that crime, she would. The holographic display showed Thraxon 4 turning gray. The energy signature of the world faded into nothing. The colony was gone. "That's the first," Voss said. "Keep going. We have 1,000 worlds to burn." The Vorkath fleet assembled in the Krelly system. 500 ships, dreadnoughts, carriers, frigates, destroyers. The largest force ever marshaled in Dominion history. Ithrax commanded them, and for the first time in his long career, he felt no excitement, only dread. The humans had destroyed a dozen more worlds since the council meeting. They had been ruthless, methodical, and relentless. No pattern that could be predicted. No weakness that could be exploited. They appeared, struck, and vanished before the Vorkath could respond. But now they were going to change that. Intelligence reports suggested a human fleet was moving through this sector. Ithrax had no illusions that he would win the battle. He knew what he was facing. He had spent too many hours studying the recordings, the wreckage, the patterns of destruction. The humans were not going to be defeated in a single battle. They were not going to be defeated in 100 battles. They had spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment. They had built a civilization in the darkness, had turned their grief into a weapon so powerful that it could erase worlds. But Ithrax had to try. He had to slow them down. He had to give the Dominion time to rally. "They're here," his tactical officer said, multiple contacts emerging from deep space, probably 12 ships, 13, 14. Ithrax looked at the tactical display. The human ships were small compared to his own, sleeker, faster, almost elegant. They moved with a precision that was almost eerie, coordinating in ways that his own fleet couldn't match. "Hold formation," he ordered. "Wait for my command." The human ships came closer. Ithrax could see them now through the forward viewport. They were different from anything the Vorcha had ever faced, angular, dark, with a design aesthetic that seemed to have no purpose beyond intimidation. "Helm, bring us about." Tactical charge. "The forward batteries, we're going to hit them hard and fast." The Vorcha fleet moved forward. The human fleet moved forward. And then, at a distance that was almost suicidal, the human ships opened fire. The energy beams were focused, efficient. Each shot hit a vital component of one of Ithrax's ships: an engine, a weapon battery, a command center. The first volley destroyed 20 ships. "Return fire," Ithrax shouted. The Vorkath ships opened fire. Bolts of energy lashed out across the void. They hit the human ships and disappeared. "What is happening?" Ithrax demanded. "Their shields are deflecting our weapons," his tactical officer said. "We're not doing any damage." Ithrax looked at the human fleet. They were still advancing. Their weapons were still firing. He realized with cold clarity that the humans were not trying to destroy his fleet. They were trying to send a message. "Pull back," he ordered. "Get us out of here." But it was too late. The human ships had already boxed them in. They were firing in patterns that Ithrax had never seen before. Their ships moved like water, flowing through gaps that shouldn't have existed, striking from angles that shouldn't have been possible. The battle lasted 3 hours. In the end, Ithrax's fleet was reduced to 100 ships, a fifth of its original strength. The humans had lost only 2. Ithrax watched from the bridge of his flagship as the human fleet withdrew. They didn't pursue. They didn't gloat. They simply disappeared into the darkness. "Status report," he asked, his voice hollow. 50% casualties, his aide said. "Surviving ships are damaged. We can't hold this system." Ithrax nodded. He had known it would be like this. He had known that the humans were not fighting a war. They were conducting an extermination. "We retreat," he said. "Regroup. We'll try again." The human fleet was winning. They had destroyed 150 colonies. They had wiped Out 17 Vorkath fleets, they had become the terror of the Dominion, a legend that spread like wildfire through the galaxy. But they were also losing. Voss stood in the medical bay of the shattered promise, watching as the wounded were brought in. The humans had taken losses, 13 ships destroyed, 600 dead. The Vorkath were learning, they were adapting, and they were putting up a fight. We can't keep this up forever, Adebio said. Our supply lines are stretched thin. We're running out of fuel, out of ammunition, out of spare parts. Voss nodded. She had known this moment would come. The humans were the underdogs. They had to win quickly or they would lose. We have one more weapon, she said. The final strike. If we can hit their home world, we can end this. Adebio looked at her. The home world. Captain, that's suicide. Their defenses are impregnable. We've seen the intelligence. We've seen the intelligence, Voss agreed, and we've seen what happens when we use the grief engine on their colonies. We've seen their panic, their desperation. They're afraid of us. If we hit their home world, they'll break. The plan was audacious. The Vorkath home world. Vorkath was the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. 3 layers of orbital defenses. A fleet that never left orbit. Ground-based weapons that could reach any target in the system. But the humans had a secret. They had been working on something for centuries. A weapon that could penetrate any defense. A weapon that could destroy the home world of their enemies. We have to do it, Voss said. We have to show them that no one is safe, that no matter how high they build their walls, we can reach them. The crew began to prepare. The shattered promise would lead the attack. It would be the first ship through the defenses, the first ship to reach Vorkath. The rest of the fleet would follow. Voss watched them work. She felt the same familiar ache of grief, the same weight of loss that had never lifted. And for the first time in 3,000 years, she felt a glimmer of something else. Hope. Ithrax was pulled from the wreckage of his flagship, his carapace cracked, his limbs broken. He expected to die. He expected the humans to kill him without hesitation. Instead, they healed him. He woke in a small room, lying on a soft bed. The ceiling above him was white, unadorned. The walls were pale gray. He was alone. He tried to move. Pain flared through his body. He fell back against the bed. Don't move, a voice said. Ithrax turned his head. A human was standing in the doorway, female, dark hair, dark eyes, a face that was calm and expressionless. She wore a simple uniform unadorned by rank or decoration. You're Captain Voss, Ithrax said. I am. You're going to kill me. No. Ithrax stared at her. Why not? You've killed everyone else. You've destroyed everything we had. Voss stepped into the room. She sat down in a chair next to his bed, her eyes never leaving his face. I'm not here to kill you, she said. I'm here to show you something. She pulled out a small device and placed it on the bedside table. A holographic image appeared, a group of human children playing in a park, running, laughing, falling. Their parents were nearby, watching them with love in their eyes. This is my Earth, Voss said. This is what you took from me, from my people, from billions of people who never did anything to hurt you. Ithrax looked at the image. The children were happy. They were innocent. They had no idea what was coming. We were going to destroy you, he said. We thought you were too dangerous to leave alive. You were wrong, Voss said. We would never have been a threat to you. We were too busy fighting each other. We had no interest in conquering the galaxy. We just wanted to live. Ithrax didn't respond. I'm not going to kill you, Voss said. Again, I want you to go back to your people. I want you to tell them what you've seen. I want you to tell them that we're not monsters, we're not demons, we're people who lost everything. And what will you do? Ithrax asked. After you've destroyed everything we have? Voss looked at him. We'll stop. We don't want your worlds. We don't want your resources. We want justice. And when you felt enough of it, we'll go back to the darkness. We'll rebuild. We'll try to forget. Ithrax returned to the Dominion Council with the weight of everything he had seen pressing down on him. The council was waiting, old faces, frightened faces, desperate faces. They looked to him for answers. They'll stop, he said, they'll stop. When we understand what we took from them, they want justice, not revenge. Justice. The council erupted, anger, denial, fear, snorts. They argued for hours, days, weeks. The humans continued their attacks, but they were slowing down. Their supply lines were stretched thin. Their resources were running out. They couldn't keep fighting forever. Finally, the Supreme Counselor spoke. We'll negotiate, he said. We'll offer reparations. We'll give them everything they want. No, Ithrax said. That's not what they want. They don't want our wealth. They don't want our worlds. They want us to remember. He played the recording he had made. The faces of the Earth children laughing and playing in their lost world. The council watched in silence. Every world we built was built on their ashes, Ithrax said. Every victory we celebrated was a victory over innocent people. We were wrong, and until we admit that, they will never stop. The council voted. The war would end. The humans would stop their attacks. Dominion would forever remember what they had done. But the memory would not be a punishment. It would be a lesson. Lesson about the weight of grief, the power of love, and the terrible consequences of hate. Ithrax watched the last human ships disappear into the darkness. He knew that the humans would go back to their hidden worlds, to their silent grief. He knew that they would never forgive, but he also knew that they would never forget. And in that understanding, he found the beginning of something new, a chance to make things right. The last ember of Earth's children had burned bright enough to light the way toward something better.